You know, when you're playing a really visually stunning video game, you're usually completely captivated by the graphics.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like the lighting, the textures.
Right, you're looking at the texture of the mountains or the way the light hits the water, the way the characters move. But underneath all of that beautiful surface-level imagery, it's actually just lines of code.
It's just pure data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's pure structured math dictating exactly how every single leaf on a tree is supposed to render, or, how gravity works in that world and how the wind interacts with the environment.
Yeah, and the thing is, we never actually see those zeros and ones, right? But they are the absolute foundation of the reality being presented on the screen. I mean, if the underlying code is flawed, the entire world falls apart.
The game just crashes. And that brings us perfectly to the mission of today's deep dive. We are taking a stack of really fascinating source material, today specifically a really comprehensive crystal Reiki manual, along with some deep philosophical insights from a text called Crystals by Rob.
Which is such a fascinating read, by the way.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we're using these texts to explore the concept of sacred geometry. Because according to these sources, our physical universe actually has a source code.
Right, a hidden geometry.
Yeah, a fundamental mathematics dictating how invisible universal energies physically manifest into the world around us. So we're going to look at how this code shows up in nature, specifically through crystals, and more importantly, how you can use these exact patterns to organize your own life, your focus, and your physical space.
And it really is a profound shift in perspective when you get into it. But to understand how to use this code in your everyday life, we first have to look at what it actually is and how ancient cultures recognized it long before we were using it to arrange crystals on our desks.
Right, let's start exactly there. So the material enthusiastically calls sacred geometry the symbolic language of the universe. It describes it as the blueprint of energy flow. So what does this all mean for you listening?
Well, metaphysically, the texts define it as the divine architecture of existence. It's the literal framework through which spirit, or energy, if you prefer, actually becomes physical form.
Okay, so spirit becoming form.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here is the underlying premise that everything in existence is interconnected through these exact energetic patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So a shape isn't just a visual boundary or like a random doodle.
Right.
According to this framework, each shape actually holds a unique vibration or frequency. It acts as a structure that affects both energy and consciousness. And, it's important to realize this isn't some modern New Age invention.
Not at all.
Ancient civilizations, we're talking about Egypt, Greece, India, and the Mayan world, they recognized these mathematical patterns as foundational. They actively built their temples, their pyramids, their sacred sites based on these exact geometric proportions.
Wow.
The goal wasn't just aesthetic beauty either. They were designing these structures to align with cosmic forces, to create spaces that naturally magnified focus and spiritual energy.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because I want to play the skeptic for you here, and I don't want you to let me off the hook with a vague answer.
Fair enough, hit me.
The text makes this massive claim. It says, as geometry shapes the universe, it also shapes your energy. But how exactly does a simple static shape, say a triangle drawn on a piece of paper or carved into a stone pillar, how does that hold a vibration that actually affects human consciousness?
That's the big question.
Right. Like if I draw a square on a napkin, did I just change the energy of the coffee shop?
Yeah.
Because that feels like a huge leap.
It does feel like a leap if you're looking at it purely as like magic rather than a mechanism. So let's look at the underlying logic the manual actually presents. The core idea is that energy is never static. Energy moves, and crucially, it moves in patterns.
Okay.
It doesn't just flow randomly. Think about sound waves or light refracting, or even the way water spirals down a drain. It all follows physical, mathematical laws.
Right. The universe likes order.
Exactly. So when the text talks about a shape holding a vibration, it's talking about cognitive and spatial resonance. When you purposefully align yourself, your mind, your physical space, your intentions, with these universal geometric patterns, you are essentially creating a physical anchor for your psychology.
Which removes the resistance.
Yes. You are removing what the text calls energetic resistance.
Wait, break down energetic resistance for me. What does that actually mean in practice?
Okay. Think about it like acoustics in a room.
Oh, good analogy.
If you build a room with chaotic random angles, sound bounces around terribly, right? It creates echoes, noise, and just confusion. That's acoustic resistance. But if you design a room using perfect geometric proportions, the sound flows beautifully. It actually amplifies.
I see.
The text is arguing that human consciousness and energy work the exact same way. By surrounding yourself with these fundamental shapes, you are tuning your environment to the frequency of natural order.
Wow.
You're building a room where your intentions can echo clearly, which naturally brings focus, balance, and higher awareness.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. You're essentially creating an environment where your mind doesn't have to fight the current. You're swimming with it. And if these massive cosmic patterns dictate the layout of entire galaxies and the construction of ancient pyramids, it's honestly mind-blowing to realize that those exact same mathematical laws govern the literal rocks buried in the dirt beneath our feet.
The crystals.
Yes, which naturally leads us into how crystals actually physicalize this math.
Exactly. The source material explains that crystals naturally embody these sacred geometric principles. I mean, they aren't just random clumps of minerals that happen to look pretty.
Right, it's not just a shiny rock.
No, it all comes down to their internal atomic structures. At a microscopic level, they follow precise, repeating geometric arrangements. And that internal geometry dictates exactly how the crystal grows, how it stores energy, and how it transmits that energy.
We get some incredible specific evidence for this in the reading, too. Take quartz, for example. The text says quartz naturally forms in a hexagonal lattice, so a six-sided structure.
Yep.
And metaphysically, that specific geometry is associated with harmony and clarity. Then you have pyrite, which often grows in perfect natural cubes, like literally perfect cubes. The text links the cube shape to grounding and manifestation.
And then there's fluorite, right?
Yes, fluorite, which forms octahedrons. Think of two pyramids stacked base to base, and the manual links its shape to focus and mental organization.
And if we apply our WHY and out W here, the geometry absolutely determines the function. It's structural integrity translating into psychological and energetic integrity. Like, let's look at the cube of pyrite. Why would a cube represent grounding?
Because it's the ultimate stable foundation.
Exactly. In architecture, in physics, a cube sits flat. It has a low center of gravity. It is immovable. So when the manual says pyrite is for grounding, it's because the physical structure of the object itself is a literal manifestation of stability.
It anchors you.
Right.
Yeah.
Touching it or even just looking at it anchors your mind to the concept of a solid foundation.
There's a quote from the source that perfectly encapsulates this. It says, when you work with crystals, you're tapping into the same mathematical harmony that underlies creation itself.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
To put that in perspective for you listening, holding a piece of pyrite isn't just holding a shiny rock. You're holding a physical, naturally occurring model of stability. The Earth literally grew a perfectly stable cube entirely without human intervention.
But, recognizing that internal geometry of a crystal is really just the beginning of the practice. The texts emphasize that to truly utilize these energies, you have to understand the specific architectural blueprints of the shapes themselves.
The vocabulary of the
Yeah,
data.
exactly. You need to know how these different lenses focus light, so to speak, before you can start building with them.
Right. So let's dive into some of the most fascinating blueprints the manual provides. We aren't going to list every single shape like a geometry textbook, because nobody wants that.
No, definitely not.
But we do want to trace the journey from simple foundations to massive cosmic complexity. So we start, of course, with the absolute basics. The circle, which represents wholeness and eternity. The triangle, bringing balance and heavily tied to manifestation, and the fire element.
Right.
The square, which we just discussed with pyrite, representing earthly stability. And the diamond, symbolizing the balance of opposing forces and intellectual clarity.
So those are your fundamental building blocks, but the magic really happens when those blocks start to interact and grow. The sources move from those basics into what we might call the shapes of life and growth. And the most prominent of these is the spiral.
Oh, the spiral is everywhere. It's famously seen in seashells and the movement of hurricanes in the arms of our galaxy.
Yeah, and it forms the mathematical basis of the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio.
Which is huge.
Huge. If you aren't familiar, the Fibonacci sequence is a series of numbers where each number is the sum of the two that precede it. It creates a spiral that expands outward at a perfect, predictable ratio. It is literally the math of organic growth. I mean, it is the shape of our DNA.
So how does the manual apply that to everyday life?
Symbolically, it associates the spiral with life force, spiritual expansion, and the chakras turning in vortexes to ignite Kundalini energy.
Wait, Kundalini energy.
Yeah, which is essentially an ancient term for a latent, powerful energy coiled at the base of the spine. But even on a more practical level, if you are looking to expand, whether that's expanding your influence, growing a business, or broadening your understanding of the world, the spiral is the geometric lens to focus on.
Because it's all about outward growth.
Exactly. Its entire mathematical purpose is outward sustainable growth.
I love that. The same math that spins a galaxy is spinning your DNA, and you can harness that momentum.
Yeah.
Now, what happens when two distinct growing things encounter each other? That brings us to our next major shape, which is the Vesica Piscis.
Such a fascinating symbol.
It really is. Visually, if you're trying to picture it, imagine a Venn diagram. It's two identical circles that overlap so that the center of each circle lies on the perimeter of the other. It creates that almond shape right in the middle.
And it is a profoundly important symbol in the text. It associates it with the creation of the universe and represents duality coming together, the connection between above and below, male and female, light and dark. It visually teaches that without one, there cannot be the other.
And the manual specifically notes that the focus of this symbol is on balance and harmony. It's incredibly useful for rebirth, new endeavors, or health.
And let's look at the why behind that. When a physical body or a relationship is imbalanced, it's almost always because aspects are fragmented from the whole.
Right.
Two things are operating independently and clashing. The Vesica Piscis, that almond shape in the middle, is the literal bridge. It represents the shared ground. The text notes it helps to reconnect and reestablish internal communication. Yeah, it's even recommended for reconnecting with people who have gone astray, because you are meditating on the concept of finding that overlapping middle ground.
That is such a powerful visual.
Yeah.
Also, the text mentions the Borromean rings and the triquetra in this section, too.
Yes. The Borromean rings unite three Vesicae Piscis. The manual says that's great for group goals or family dynamics.
And the triquetra represents the interconnected mind, body, and spirit. The manual calls it the tripod of life, which it says is perfect for artists and creatives who are trying to remove mental blocks.
Exactly.
And if you take that concept of circles overlapping and you scale it up even further, you arrive at what the manual calls the creation cycle. This is the journey from a seed to a full bloom. If you take 7 overlapping circles, you get the seed of life. The manual connects those 7 circles directly to the 7 chakras, used for protection and successful completion of projects.
Right. And if you take that pattern and replicate it exactly 19 times, you get the flower of life.
The famous one.
Yes, the flower of life is arguably the most famous sacred geometric pattern out there. The manual notes this exact pattern has been found burned into the atomic structure of ancient temples and is at least 6,000 years old.
Unbelievable.
It is widely considered the ultimate template for everything that exists. What's incredible is that if you look closely at the intersecting lines of the flower of life, you can find almost every other shape hidden perfectly inside it.
And because of how many configurations occur within it, the text actually warns that using the flower of life requires real focus.
It's intense.
Yeah, it's highly effective, but it's complex. You are essentially looking at the interwoven tapestry of reality. The manual specifically highlights it for working through deep, complicated issues around the self, things like profound self-awareness or trying to cultivate self-love when you feel completely fragmented.
Which brings us to the absolute peak of this geometric journey, the ultimate complex shapes mentioned in the texts. First, there's the Star of David interlocking triangles pointing up and down, which the text connects to the heart chakra in discerning one's highest good. But then you have Metatron's cube.
Yes, also known as a Merkaba in certain configurations.
Exactly. Visually, it consists of 13 circles connected by straight lines radiating outward from the center. And within this single, highly complex pattern, you can extract all 5 of the Platonic solids.
Let's make sure we explain that clearly for the listener. The Platonic solids are the fundamental 3D elements of all physical matter, right?
Precisely. To put it simply, a Platonic solid is a 3D shape where every single face is the exact same regular polygon and the same number of faces meet at every vertex.
Right.
There are only 5 that can exist in 3-dimensional space. The tetrahedron, the cube, the octahedron, the dodecahedron, and the icosahedron. Plato believed these 5 shapes were the building blocks of the elements: fire, earth, air, universe, and water.
And the text states that Metatron's cube literally contains all of them. It is believed to be the geometric map for constructing reality.
Yes.
Okay, I have to jump in here with a reality check.
Oh,
because if I'm trying to use this to improve my life, this sounds incredibly intimidating.
Yeah.
With a shape that complex one, that the text claims literally contains the geometric map for the entire universe. How does a beginner even begin to focus on it without their brain just totally short-circuiting? Am I supposed to memorize every single intersecting line?
But that is a great question, and it's exactly why the manual assigns it a very specific, overarching purpose. You don't have to consciously track every single line or mentally rotate 3D shapes in your head.
Okay.
Because it contains the foundation from which all life is created. The symbol acts as the ultimate harmonizer.
What does that mean practically?
Yeah.
Like in my living room?
It means it's associated with problem solving on all levels of consciousness. Think of it like a master key. If you are dealing with a situation that is so messy, so chaotic, and has so many moving parts that you can't even figure out where to start.
You don't use a simple triangle.
Exactly. You don't use a simple triangle, you use Metatron's cube. You are using a visual representation of ultimate complex order to anchor your mind. You are reminding your brain that even in the most chaotic systems, there is an underlying structure.
So if you're facing a massive, seemingly unsolvable problem, you focus on the map that built the universe. It shifts your perspective from panic to pattern recognition. That is incredibly cool.
It really is, and this is exactly where we transition from the theory to the practical application. We've explored these architectural blueprints. We know how the crystals naturally embody them. Now, the sources explain exactly how to write a sentence with these words, how to build with them in the real world.
Yes, the manual outlines a highly structured method for working with these concepts, primarily through something called crystal grids. And I want to give you the ultimate equation the manual provides for this practice. It explicitly states intention, which is the mind plus geometry, which is the form plus crystals, which is the energy, equals true magic.
I love how the text breaks this down into a step-by-step practical guide. It completely removes the mystery and turns it into a clear, repeatable ritual.
Yes.
Step one is always setting an intention. You have to choose your focus clearly. Are you seeking love, abundance, clarity, protection, healing? The text heavily advises writing it down or saying it aloud to bring the thought into the physical room.
And then step 2 is selecting your geometric pattern based on those blueprints we just went through. This is where you pick your lens.
Right.
If your intention is unity and wholeness, you might lay down a drawing of a circle. If it's outward growth, you use a spiral. If it's heavy protection and ordering chaos, you use Metatron's cube.
Then step 3 is choosing the crystals that match that specific intention. The manual is very specific here about which internal mathematical structures support which goals.
What are some examples?
Well, for love and emotional healing, it suggests rose quartz, rhodonite, or green aventurine. For abundance and grounding, you'd want citrine, pyrite, or jade. For protection, stones like black tourmaline, smoky quartz, or obsidian.
And finally, step 4 is activation. This is crucial. You don't just set the rocks down on the paper and walk away to go watch TV.
No, definitely not.
The source instructs you to use a clear quartz point or a selenite wand to physically trace the shape of your grid, energetically connecting each crystal while repeating your intention out loud.
Let's talk about the why of that activation step. Why trace the lines? It's about kinetic intention. It locks your mind to the physical action. You are actively wiring the circuit. You are forcing your brain to acknowledge the connection between the thought in your head, the geometry on the table, and the physical earth in the form of the crystal.
The manual gives us some fantastic real-world examples of powerhouse combinations to really inspire the listener, too.
Oh, yeah, those are great.
For example, imagine placing a citrine pyramid on a grid shaped like a triangle. Let's break that down. Citrine is a stone of abundance. The pyramid shape directs energy upward to a single point. And the triangle grid is the geometry of focused manifestation.
It's incredibly powerful.
You're stacking a stone of wealth, a shape of focus, and a grid of creation. It is a highly targeted, multi-layered layout for manifesting prosperity.
Or consider another example from the text. If you use a rose quartz sphere, the sphere naturally representing wholeness and radiating energy equally in all directions, and you place it in a circular grid representing unity, you've created an environment perfectly tuned for emotional healing and self-love.
It's like an echo chamber of healing.
Yes. Everything about that physical setup whispers safety and wholeness to your subconscious. And the other text, Crystals by Rob, talks about specific carvings, too.
Right, like the carvings of the shapes themselves.
Yeah, he mentions using Merkaba stars for astral travel or dodecahedrons for divine connection. The philosophy there is that using these specific objects isn't just about aesthetics. It's tapping directly into the blueprint of creation.
This raises such an important point about how we interact with physical objects in general. It completely changes your perspective on the space around you.
Absolutely.
When you engage with these concepts, you aren't just decorating an altar or making a living room look nice for guests. You are actively engaging in a mindfulness practice that utilizes spatial awareness. You are reweaving the energy of your environment into a state of harmony. You realize that architecture, furniture placement, and the objects you hold are constantly communicating a structural language to your brain.
It's an incredibly empowering concept. The overarching summary of all the texts we've explored today is this. Sacred geometry teaches us that we are not separate from creation.
We are creation.
Exactly. We are creation, expressed in perfect form. The mathematical patterns that exist in the cosmos are the exact same patterns that exist within our own cellular structure.
Which brings us right back to that video game code we talked about at the very beginning.
Right.
If the code is universally applied, from the deepest galaxy to the rock on your desk, you have access to it. You aren't just an NPC wandering around the game hoping for the best.
No, you have access to the dev console.
Yes. You have the ability to engage with the physics engine itself.
That is the perfect way to frame it. And that leaves us with something really important to consider as we wrap up today. If the mathematical spiral dictates the literal shape of our DNA, and our bodies naturally resonate with these deep energetic geometries, think about the physical spaces you inhabit every single day.
Oh, that's a great point. Your home, your office.
Yeah. Are you subconsciously creating your own chaotic grids just by how you arrange the furniture, your desk, or the objects around you? If geometry affects focus and energy, what kind of geometric footprint are you living inside right now?
That is a brilliant question to end on. Seriously, take a look around your room today. Notice the angles, the clutter, the flow. Maybe look at the shapes surrounding you a little differently and ask yourself if you're swimming with the current or fighting against it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We'll catch you next time.